Hello, everyone. How are we? My name is Megan, and we are going to be talking about conjugated linoleic acid, also known as CLA, which is a relatively popular ergogenic aid. So, let's get into it. So, these are a couple examples of what you would kind of see as far as labeling and advertising, things like that. Typically, CLA is going to come in the form of a soft gel. However, in the top left, that NutriCost one, that one is actually a powder, but I would say majority of the time you're going to find it as a soft gel. So it comes in sizes and serving sizes of about 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams per capsule, or I guess per serving, and well, I guess per capsule. But they do recommend usually it's like 3 capsules a day, and that's going to be about 3 grams. So they recommend around 3 grams, I guess, per serving or per day. As far as pricing is concerned, it's not too expensive. Um, I feel like there are more expensive, even just protein powder would be more expensive than this. I feel like protein powder is around $2.50 per day, depending on which protein powder you buy. But this is a little bit cheaper than that. So it's around $20 to $35 for one of these bottles, and it's going to have 90 to 180 capsules. And when I was looking at, I found for as cheap, or I guess there probably could be some cheaper out there, but your normal third-party tested kind of CLA is going to run as cheap as about 50 cents for that 3 gram serving per day and up to around $1.20. So the one in the top left, that one was one of the cheaper ones I could find. I'm guessing it's because it's powder form. It might be a little bit harder to ingest, and so it's going to be a little bit cheaper as opposed to the capsules. There are a lot of different claims that we're going to talk about in just a second, but I wanted to put them on this slide. You can kind of see these claims on the capsule, on the packages here. We have healthy metabolic rate support, weight management support, lean muscle support, and supports bodybuilding and fitness goals. So all of these are technically within the guidelines that the FTC says. They are good structure function claims, but there's obviously some other ones that are not as good, and we'll see that in just a second. So as far as the claims that are I guess, suggested on all of the packaging. Healthy metabolic rate support has not really been supported by the research. Weight management support, there was a meta-analysis showing around half to 1.3 kilograms of fat loss over months, but overall the effects of CLA are very small and insignificant. So while they might be able to throw that in there, it might be a little bit misleading. As far as lean muscle support goes, there are no significant increases in lean body mass and supporting body building and fitness goals. It may slightly reduce fat mass as shown in that meta-analysis above, and we'll look a little bit more in the literature later, but it's almost too small to improve athletic performance. So, people might be stretching the, I guess, value of CLA just a little bit. So here's an example of an advertisement that I saw that I just wanted to die laughing because CLA, the research is incredibly underwhelming, and so this is just very misleading to see. Wow, it's demonstrated the ability of notably decreasing body fat composition while preserving muscle tissue. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. Okay, so moving on, we'll talk about the physiology of CLA. So it's an omega-6 fatty acid. It's a polyunsaturated fatty acid. So it has both trans and cis bonds. So it's technically a natural trans fat, which is really interesting because usually when we talk about trans fats, we think like immediately give it an X, we're not about it. But because it's a natural trans fat, it's actually shown to be the opposite of omega-6 in the fact that it's anti-inflammatory. So it's not a pro-inflammatory fatty acid like omega-6 typically is, which I thought was interesting. It does inhibit, or I guess these are all the proposed mechanisms of action, is that it's going to inhibit lipoprotein lipase, which allows for increased lipid metabolism. So it's helping to decrease that storage of fat. It's also going to block adipogenesis, which alters PPAR gamma signaling, which physically prevents new fat cells from developing and maturing. The claim is also that it's going to upregulate CPT1, which will help to transport fatty acids into cells mitochondria to be burned for energy. So more fat burning. We also have promoting lipolysis to promote the breakdown of stored triglycerides in fat by releasing them back into the blood to be used by skeletal muscle, kind of on the same line as CPT1. And then also eicosanoid regulation, just like unlike other omega-6s, like I mentioned earlier, CLA is going to change the production of inflammatory signaling and help to decrease inflammation. And then it's also going to directly interact with immune cells like macrophages to reduce the secretion of inflammatory cytokines like TNF alpha and IL-6. So, I mean, the proposed mechanisms are pretty awesome. I mean, if there was something that did this for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm about it. I think it could help a lot of different populations. But unfortunately, the evidence does not necessarily agree, or at least if it does agree, it's incredibly underwhelming. So, this is one study that was really interesting. They looked at resistance training and they had a placebo and just a obviously CLA, 28 days, and they measured body composition, strength, and different blood markers, and they did not find any significant improvements with CLA. And I would say this is pretty consistent with majority of the literature about CLA in general. It did not improve body weight, lean muscle mass, body fat percentage, bone mass, strength, blood metabolites, or any related to muscle breakdown and immune function. So, big thumbs down from this study as far as the effectiveness of CLA. I will say it was only 28 days, so if we wanted to maybe increase that study and maybe the sample size as well, maybe we'd see some different results. I think in other research, they have shown that the testing must be 4 weeks or greater in order to see results. So that could potentially be something about this. But I do think it's interesting, and I will say majority of the research is consistent with this study. This study was a little bit different. It was a meta-analysis. They looked at CLA and exercise on body composition, and they did find results. So, I mean, you could argue that maybe it was majority of the exercise that was making a difference. However, they did find that CLA and exercise reduced body fat and insulin resistance, but then again, very small effect sizes. So it was negative 0.42 of an effect size for the body fat reduction and only negative 0.25 for insulin resistance. So very small effect sizes. There were the greatest benefits in overweight individuals and women. So I will say it would be interesting to look at this in athletes, to really see like does CLA even impact athletes, people who are already maybe your average soccer player who is probably already pretty fit, relatively low body composition or body fat percentage. Is it going to have that big of an influence? I'm not quite sure. Like I mentioned earlier, the studies over 4 weeks are the ones that started to see the most impact. So taking it for at least 4 weeks would be of value if you were going to take CLA. I will also say that they did see that over time it did start to plateau. So I'm not quite sure if you need to be on a maintenance dose of CLA or if it's like you take it for a while, you plateau, and then you're done. Um, that would really be interesting to see kind of longitudinal studies that way. This study did not find any influence on body weight, exercise performance, or cholesterol. But it was generally safe and there were no adverse effects, which is good to know. So, finally, the last piece of evidence I wanted to look at was another meta-analysis looking at 18 randomized control trials. They had a dosage of about 3.2 grams per day, so in line with most serving sizes of 3 grams per day, and they saw 0.05 kilograms per week of weight loss, which over an entire year, you're maybe looking about 2 or 3 pounds. So, if you feel like that's your answer and you're like, yeah, I'm doing it, then maybe this is for you. But that I would say the zero point zero 0.05 kgs per week, probably not everyone was seeing that. That to me, that shows it's pretty inconsistent. Some people are not doing anything, some people are losing it. I feel like it's pretty inconsistent. As well as versus the placebo, it just doesn't seem incredibly. I mean, I just would say there's probably better supplements out there to help with that. Finally, they did say, CLA does produce a modest reduction in body fat. But like I said, in this meta-analysis, they made sure to mention that results did vary across studies and the effects were small and inconsistent. So, overall, would I recommend CLA? No, I wouldn't. I think out of all the supplements out there, I think CLA is not worth your time or your money. Maybe in some situations you need that extra zero point zero 0.05 kilograms, then maybe it's for you. Um, and maybe there's specific populations. Maybe if you fall into more of an obesity or maybe a woman population, maybe it's good. But I will say I do think there are other supplements to think about. especially in this class, we've talked a lot about balancing our diet just with proper nutrition, things like that. And so I would say I would first start with balanced diet, exercise, getting good sleep, reducing stress, things like that. As far as trying to improve your body composition or things that way, before you jump into taking all these supplements like CLA, which, as we also learned, a lot of ergogenic aids have an increased risk of banned substances and just adulterated ingredients that we don't really want to be ingesting anyway. So I would probably start by doing those before taking CLA. But then again, it's everybody's decision. And if it's something you think that's going to work for you, then by all means, go for it. So here are my citations. Thank you, and we'll see you guys next time.